All right, let's get going. This is episode 65 of Utah in the Weeds, the big 6-5, Tim.
How long have we been doing this?
About a year and a half. About a year and a half now.
Right? So episode 65, it is Independence Day coming up. Happy 4th of July to everybody from Utah in the Weeds.
Yeah, there's parades going on this year and fireworks, so get out and enjoy it. And don't burn down, the mountains.
Don't use a flame to burn down the mountain, right? Maybe the flame law in Utah was a good thing because now we're in a drought.
Who's on the podcast today? Vanessa Nielsen. This is a heck of a story on the podcast today, Tim.
Yeah, this is a serious one. I was fascinated with the conversation with her. She is somebody who suffered from breast cancer, has history beyond that.
A PTSD history,
PTSD history, but has been a longtime cannabis user. And I like the evolution of her story with cannabis and how she was using it and learning so much more about cannabis. This is good for people to hear because she's somebody who grew up here, right? And people didn't know
that she was using cannabis.
That's right. It's great for people to talk about, and she feels much more comfortable about it. It's just a good conversation. I'm excited to have people listen.
We're going to be going on a new podcast schedule for releases. Typically, we release every Friday at 4:20 a.m. For the summer, at least, we're going to go to an every other week.
Yep. It's been exciting that all the pharmacies have been coming open and we've been talking to so many people. And I think this will be good for us to do an every other week schedule for a little while.
I think it'll allow listeners to kind of even catch up with some of the back episodes. It will allow Tim and I to get out a little bit more. Because I don't know about you, but last year I didn't really have much of a summer. So this year I'm getting out and going to enjoy things a little bit more.
Going on a couple of trips, so it'll give us a little bit more freedom. And hope everybody, just know we're still here. Just going to be great episodes every other week for a little while at least.
UtahMarijuana.org. Go spend a lot of time there because, you can go to /podcast, obviously, and listen to the old podcast like Tim was mentioning, but there's a lot of other articles on there too and a lot of other valuable information that can consume your time on those off weeks, right?
That's right. There's 64 other episodes to catch up on.
Exactly.
And so you've got your work cut out for you.
Anyway, we're in every podcast app out there, so make sure you're subscribed, leave us a review, and if you don't have anything else to say, Tim, let's get into that conversation with Vanessa, because this was a good one. I enjoyed it. So, here we go. You got any plans for 4th of July?
Just putting my studio in my trailer.
Yeah.
Why are you putting your studio in your trailer?
I'm actually going on a year adventure.
What?
Calling it my healing journey. I bought a motorhome the beginning of April. It's a 36-footer and a 28-foot trailer, and I'm taking my art on the road. I do cannabis art.
You're going on this healing journey because of your cancer?
Yes, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in February of 2019, and I went through a lot of really radical treatment to get to where I am now. I'm no longer in my career. I've had to retire early until I am stable enough to go back to work. So that's been tough. So I'm going to take it on the road. I'm just going to go travel around the U.S. and see what happens.
Do you have like a goal in mind, or?
I do.
You have it kind of mapped out?
A little bit, but I don't want to be on a timeline, time constraints, or we have to be here at a certain time. I just want to take it easy and just go and see and be one with nature, do my art, and be with my dogs and my boyfriend, and just enjoy things. I had a really close call with death during my cancer treatments, so that has kind of shifted my world. I was in the same career for 30 years, can't go back to it, so now moving forward, it's what can I do now?
Sure.
So I do my art, and I'm kind of hippie, kind of hood.
So you're going to sell your art on the road, right?
Yes, hopefully.
Hopefully, that's the idea.
Yes, and it's not to make the money, it's just more to spread the awareness in cannabis. I mean, I don't do just cannabis art, but that is kind of my forte.
And you have like a special Instagram or Facebook, right, for your art? How can people, let's start right there, actually.
It's Uniqueness Creations.
Okay.
That was a name that my friends came up with after they saw what I was doing, and they're like, why don't you sell this stuff? And what I was doing was I was giving it away. Every time I would make a piece, someone would come to that piece, I'd think of their name. My buddy Brad Wheeler did a great piece for him, And it was just to share it, because I was, trying to fill my time with something that I could do when I couldn't do what I was normally doing.
So take us back to February 2019. What's life like at the time before you got diagnosed with cancer?
Actually, prior to, I was working a lot of hours. I raised my kids. I have a daughter who jumped out right when I was diagnosed and was going to the U. So it was like, wow, okay, everything shifted. I was working 12-hour days. I was really burned out. I was really stressed. And that diagnosis kind of took me sideways. Like, I had plans as soon as our youngest turned 18. We were going to move to Oregon, buy a 20-acre plot of land, and I wanted to commercially grow. And because I wasn't able to do anything about that in Utah, that was my go-to. We had an offer in on a property, and as of my diagnosis in February, the bottom fell out from my job. This property up in Oregon, just everything imploded.
How did it happen? Did you just go to a routine screening?
No, I actually found it myself. I've been very diligent. I lost my mom 16 years ago at the age of, she was 51, from the same breast cancer gene. Her sister also had it at 32. So when I found this particular lump, I knew. I was mortified. I knew. I went to the doctor, and it all went really fast after that. I didn't have any treatment prior to surgery. They wanted to do the surgery first. It had a pretty hefty growth rate, so that was concerning. I was staged at a stage 3, grade 3, and a proliferation rate of 67%. So it was moving fast.
Did you already know you had the gene?
No. And the reason being is when my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer 16 years ago, she was 50 when she was diagnosed. Gene testing was so expensive back then. They didn't offer what they offer now. They didn't have the genetic companies coming forward and saying, hey, this family member's tested positive. We're going to offer the immediate family these free tests so that we can give them the awareness that they may need moving forward. So I didn't get tested. And there's, misconceptions out there. I didn't really want to look at it because I watched what it did to my mother in 11 months. She was gone. It just took her out, and she was healthy my whole life. So it was just, she got sick and died.
At 50.
At 50. So it was pretty traumatizing. So over the years, my misconception in my mind, I don't know if it was me trying to calm my own fears, but I thought that there was a genetic skip from generation to generation. And then I was worried about my daughter. But now that I've done all the research, because it hit me, of course, then you really dive in and look at it. It's pretty scary.
How old were you when you were diagnosed?
48.
So you're doing self-exams all through really your whole life, probably just because of the fear.
Yes. Well,
right?
I started getting mammograms early due to my mom's cancer, her being young, what it was. So I was doing my mammograms faithfully. I just hadn't gone in yet for that mammogram for 2019. And so when I found it, it was interesting because I had been so run down and just so exhausted. My immune system was shy. I didn't have the energy and the pickup that I had before. So for a couple of years, I was trying to figure out. I kept telling my doctor, there's something wrong. I can't quite put my finger on it. It's, little things here and there that would come up, and I'd be like, these symptoms, what, why? I eat right, I exercise. I work hard. It's not like I'm sedentary, and then all of a sudden, bingo. That came up, and they said it could have been growing for 2 to 5 years, or it could have been in my system ready to activate for 2 to 5 years before I actually found it. So that blew my mind. Maybe had I done some precursor work after my mom passed away, maybe I would have been in a better situation.
Yeah, it's tough to say, right? So you go into treatment and surgery immediately.
I went into surgery immediately and had a bilateral mastectomy. It was torturous, to say the least. Very, and I had great doctors. They did wonders with me, and I did fairly well. They were shocked, and they used to say, you're so optimistic. We don't get it. You come in here and you're all smiles and you're always kind to everybody and happy. And I'm like, what else are you going to be? I'm not going to lay down and die. Like, that's just me. So I had to do a lot of mind trickery through it to pull myself into a position where I could heal from it. I was scared to death I was going to die. I wasn't sure I was going to make it to the 11-month mark, which is where my mom had passed away.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, you're looking into the future and thinking, well, I've seen this before.
Yes, and I was terrified. Absolutely terrified to lose my hair. My mom absolutely would not do chemo. She refused. Hers was stage 4. Her rate of recovery was so low that she just chose quality over quantity. So she didn't do chemotherapy, she did radiation. But within that 11 months, just watching the cancer take over every possible portion of her body, and the wasting away. And then, they've come a long ways with surgery. I told my doctor, I said, if I have anything of an experience like my mother had with this mastectomy, I don't know what I'll do. Like, I can't recover from that. So they were very conscious when we went in, and, like I said, they did me well. I had a lot of great doctors on my team. But I think a lot of it had to do with the mind trickery that I would pull, the meditation, and cannabis use.
Yeah, did your mom have cannabis?
She did not. Towards the end, when she was immobile and not doing very well, I actually approached her about it. She's from the 70s, man. My parents were hippies. What can I say? They smoked weed back in the day when I was a little kid. So she had kind of gone away from that in her career. But once I introduced it to her, she said, this stuff's way too strong. Like, it's not what they had in the 70s. So it was hard for her, but it helped. It helped to ease some of her pain and, allow her to eat or be able to get out of bed and, do different things that, were okay the first 6 months. And then that last 5 months was absolutely not mobile.
So you had cannabis throughout this whole period, right? I love Chris's question. Usually he asks this question. Take us back to the beginning.
Yeah, where it started, right?
Actually, my beginning with cannabis, I am an old soul. I've been probably 35 years. And it was introduced to me by cousins that were a little bit older. And, back then it was here and there, and it was kind of But over the years, I did have some tragedies happen. I lost my husband to a drunk driver. And I think that is probably when my heavy consumption really started. It was to numb it and deal with it without antidepressants, or, they wanted to load me up on Valium and Xanax so I wouldn't feel. The thing is I just needed to numb enough and to be able to cope and do my job and get through life. I can't take Xanax and just have everything stop. So I used a lot of cannabis, and it got me through. It helped me emotionally. I had a little bit of PTSD from it, from his accident and different things that had come up. So it helped. And over the years, it always helped. So I've never been one to take pain pills. I've never been able to take pain pills. So my go-to versus a Xanax or pills or antidepressants has always been cannabis.
Did you grow up here in Utah?
I did.
So you've been consuming here in Utah then for 30 plus years?
Absolutely. Yes. And that is hard for me to admit. A lot of people know me.
Nothing wrong with that, though. Right. I think a lot more people are coming out and talking about it and being open about it.
Yeah, we talk to people all the time who grew up here in Utah and they were growing it in the ditch or they were growing it in the mountains, right?
Yes. They were over at Premium, right?
Right.
Yeah, what's his face? Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's been here the whole time.
Absolutely.
Right? And getting to know people, like humanizing the people's use of cannabis. Hey, this has been around a long time. We've been using it for the same stuff we're using it for today.
Right.
We were using it for 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and here you are, right? How did the doctors, were you open and honest with this?
So here's the curious thing with my doctors. Right directly after my surgery, they had put me on, I believe it was oxycodone or Oxycontin.
Yeah, Percocet, Oxycontin, oxycodone.
So
yeah, I did it for years.
I came home and I was absolutely sick. I could not.
Came home from
From the hospital.
Okay.
On those prescriptions, and they said, do not let this pain get ahead of her, or she'll be in trouble because of the mastectomy. And it was a major surgery.
Oh no, I've been involved in these surgeries, in general surgery. We've had breast surgeons that have come in, and they do these big bilateral surgeries.
It's heinous, to say the least.
It's a bloody mess. It's extremely painful for the patients.
Yes.
You're really just tearing the skin apart, taking all that tissue out,
Scrubbing
and then just
it down, and I mean, I can imagine.
And then you're just
all
trying
the things.
trying to like let it heal.
Yes.
On its own. It's pretty bad.
So when I got home from the hospital the first couple of days, of course, my family, my boyfriend, bless his heart, he was dosing me every 4 hours. He's writing it down, making sure. And I was so sick that not only could I not stay awake, which was probably a good thing, but every time I was awake, I was like heaving. Like I would heave and dry heave. So it was about the third day in, I said, absolutely not. I can't take this. I'll take ibuprofen. I'll take anything but these narcotics that are making me this sick. I ended up cracking a rib from throwing up. That's just after my surgery. So when I went back to the doctor's office, I just explained to him, I can't do this. They tried a couple of different things, Lortab, Percocet. It's all the same for me. Same things happen. Some are worse. But I just told them, I'm good. Just prescribe me some ibuprofen 800. I'm good. I'll go home and I'll just handle it. They looked at me like, okay. And at that point, I was scared. I was scared to say, okay, so I have a backup plan. And to you guys not knowing, cannabis is my backup and it's working. So I just need some ibuprofen. It took me probably 6 or 7 months into treatment before I finally looked at my oncologist, and he said, I don't know how you're doing this. I had nerve impingements. I had frozen shoulder. I mean, it just went through the gamut of all the things that come with surgery and being immobile and, then starting the chemotherapy and stuff.
You've got to get through the surgery. You've got to recover from the surgery to a certain point before you start chemo.
Correct.
Right? I mean, I think it's important for people to understand that too, because your immune system is not functioning really well. You don't heal as well with this big cancer in your body. So they do the surgery first, and then they have to let the body heal enough to start the chemo, because the wounds won't heal if you start chemo too early.
Yes. So I think I went 4 weeks in between my first surgery and then I started chemo. So within that 4 weeks, I took those pain pills maybe 3 days after, and then the rest of the time I used cannabis. And it was a heavy cannabis use. And I'm not going to lie. I mean,
how heavy? Like, what are we talking? Ounce a week or 2 ounces a week or what?
Probably a couple of ounces a week.
Nice.
And it was keeping things at bay. I wasn't able to really get up and move around. I wasn't quite mobile yet. So that was hard, but it kept the nausea down. The pain, actually, it took the edge off the pain enough to where ibuprofen worked to where I wasn't losing my mind with pain. That was the most excruciating thing I've ever experienced. Even now, I still have a lot of residual pain from it, but wow. So
yeah, that's a lot of pain.
Now this was back in 2019, you said, right?
Correct.
And you're just recently, well, you got your medical card here in Utah, you said pretty much right when it started.
2019, did you have a provider that wrote you a letter?
I did not. I couldn't find one. I had talked to a couple of my doctors, and my one doctor, bless his heart, he's still my doctor. I love him to death.
He hasn't dropped you, huh? He hasn't said, get out of here, you pot smoker.
No, but he said, I'm sorry, it's a gray area in Utah. I'm not sure I want to put my name on the line with this at this point because...
Interesting.
I don't know. He says, I don't agree with opioid use and stuff like that. I'm very careful of what I prescribe to my patients. He said, but cannabis, that's opening a whole nother...
Right.
Now, this doctor, mind you, back in the day, I'm sure back in college, I'm sure he had experiences. So it's not that he was closed-minded, but he was afraid
he had
to
his
say,
license on the line.
I'll give you a letter.
Right. It's extremely common even now, right? I don't know if I'm covered malpractice wise. I don't know if I don't want the legal liability. I don't know anything about it. So how can I prescribe or recommend something that I really don't know how you can use?
Yes.
And then there's the answer, there's no evidence to support it. Well, I don't know. That's not true. But
And my doctor didn't take the stand of there's no evidence to, prove that cannabis is helpful. I think it was more of his fear in the community of being a doctor and,
Putting his name out
giving
there.
someone a letter saying, yes, I recommend that this person use cannabis. Since that time, he's totally cool with it. He knows, he monitors, and he's like, how's your pain? Every doctor that I have on my panel, which is about 6 of them, from the oncologist to the radiologist, all of them, at the top of my file, every single one of them says, do not offer gabapentin. I've refused it for 18 months. I'm not going to start it now, even though I had severe neuropathy and I've got severe nerve entrapment pain that comes and goes. I never know where it's going to be, but...
So when you're using cannabis after surgery, you're using it through chemo, you're really just only smoking?
Yes. And the reason why I smoked is because I couldn't get out of a chair. I could barely get myself to the bathroom, make myself something to eat. So I basically would roll a 20-pack of joints and I would smoke them all day long until I could just fade back and deal with. I call it mind trickery. A lot of people will call it meditation or, praying or however you spiritually connect. But that was my mainstay. Cannabis and, man, I did a lot of praying, to the universe. That's kind of my gig. I'm a spiritual gangster, so... But the cannabis, I don't think I would have made it without it.
Did you do any edibles, nothing, no tinctures, anything like that, huh?
Actually, once I started feeling better, I started chemo. That's a whole nother situation.
Yeah,
that
because,
happened.
okay, and before we get to the chemo, I just want to, there's the pain and then there's the suffering, and the THC and the cannabis isn't really controlling the pain. It's putting the pain over there.
Yes, it doesn't control it, but neither do opioids. Opioids, my doctor said, work on something in your brain. It doesn't work on the pain. Because I was like, you guys have got me wiped, absolutely wiped, throwing up. I can't think. I can't keep conversations going on these drugs that you've given me. But why am I in so much pain? I mean, the pain was nothing I've ever experienced, nor would I ever want to experience again.
But describe that a little bit, because I think that's where people get misinformed, that it's going to take away your pain and so they don't have a good experience with cannabis. Or how is it working for you exactly? And maybe that's a bad question because it's different, right? It's different than the Percocet.
Absolutely different. I could smoke a joint and be absolutely fine, carry on a conversation, keep my mind together, and be in less pain. I take opioids and I cannot function, period. I have conversations that people come back and say, do you remember that conversation we had? And I was like, no. And I never want to have one like that again. I don't like that out-of-body feeling. I like to be in control. And some people call it stoned or, oh, you're going to get stoned and do all these terrible things. That's never been the case for me. I've always been high-functioning. I've always kept a job. I've always worked my butt off. I own a home. I mean, I've always been super responsible. So tell me, that I'm a stoner. That, I had a lot of family and stuff come up and friends that would say, God, I'm like, the day that I don't...
You're smoking a lot of weed here.
Yes.
They're worried about you because you're smoking a lot of weed.
Or that, you shouldn't be smoking daily, or, whatever their reasoning was.
I have stage 3 breast cancer.
You're a drug addict.
Bro.
Yeah.
Right. And, a lot of my friends were blown away that I was actually able to function through just using cannabis.
Got it.
So.
Okay, now see, this is key, right? To people understanding.
It doesn't take away your pain completely, but it will make it manageable and it dulls the pain. As long as you're getting the right dosage and you know what's working for you, I could keep the pain under control to where I wasn't in agony and in tearful chaos all day.
Right. It's putting the pain aside. It's disassociating you from the pain enough that you can concentrate on a conversation.
Yes.
That you can take a little nap.
Yes.
Right? That you can eat something.
And that was huge for me. I wasn't eating. I had no appetite. I don't know if it was more from the surgery, but it was rough. I had no appetite. And then, of course, you get sick when you don't eat. So, I was drinking Ensure and protein shakes and different things, just trying to replenish some of that. But when I would smoke, I was able to eat a little something.
Give you the munchies.
Yes. And I really counted on that because at first I had lost quite a bit of weight after my surgery. And, I was concerned that I would rather have a little meat on my bones to fight this cancer than some of the people I would see in the chemo rooms. And I would be like, man, you don't have a fighting chance in hell. You're already thin. Like, there's not much to take away from you.
Sure. And then you go into chemo. And what was that like?
It was scary. It was very scary. So my mom, towards the end of her treatment, she was in the hospital 3 days before she died. They gave her 1 dose of Red Devil, adriamycin, and she died 3 days later. So, it just really took over her body and just didn't work. She was already on her way out, but that just kind of compounded everything. So going into the chemo, knowing that I had to do the Red Devil, and it was 6 weeks, I was scared to death. I had to cut off 13 inches of my long blonde hair. That was traumatizing. And then I buzzed my hair because they said within 2 weeks, it's right on the 14th day, all your hair's going to fall out. And I was like, No, it was 14 days and it was gone. So not only going through the physical changes, the mental anguish from those physical changes, but then you're sick on top of that and pain. So, for anyone out there that's going through those types of situations, the only thing I could do is use cannabis to kind of keep my mind where it wasn't overwhelmed to the point where I couldn't heal myself, or at least function enough to think I might have a fighting chance. So that was, and I smoked a lot. I was going through, I had someone that would roll me packs of joints, like a cigarette pack. They'd fill it up for me and just leave it every couple of days. And if I still had some, great, they'd come roll more, just so I'd always had it on hand. So that was huge to me. And then when the laws passed in Utah and it could only be vaped, I had to move over and transition once I got my card. That's been a hard transition, but... Yeah,
I can imagine, right? Because you grew up smoking.
Yes, so my tolerance is extremely high.
Do you ever take breaks?
I do. And, I don't... People say it's the gateway drug, it's addictive. I've never had a problem taking a break from it whatsoever.
Really?
It might be a little edgy because I don't have that calming sense to me, but it's not like, oh gosh, if I don't smoke, I'm going to hurt people or I'm going to rob, steal, and beat people up, Well,
I just can't sleep very well. That's the thing I run into.
Well, and I have insomnia.
Get a little irritable.
I have
sleep.
Insomnia all the time anyways, even with the smoking or use now. I don't know exactly where that comes from.
So it doesn't even knock you out at night, huh?
No.
Really? You're like Chrissy.
No.
Yeah, just
Chrissy on...
There is one thing, though. I bought a magical butter machine, the magic butter machine.
Yeah, how's that working for you?
I absolutely love that thing.
Okay,
So
let's hear the review. Let's hear
I've made
about it.
tinctures, I have made butters, I have made oils. And when I was going through the different things, I used the actual tincture oils that I made for salve. I used it on my wounds after they had healed enough to where I was in a safe zone. I started using it as a salve too. And I think personally that those oils absorbed through my skin and helped with some of that pain, especially the nerve pain that was going on.
I'm sure they did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
I did find with that magic butter machine, once I learned how to make it, decarbox, everything, go through the process. I never could really quite dose, know how much was going in there or whatever, but I would make baked goods and they worked like a charm. Like I could eat a half a cookie and, be totally good to go. Like I had smoked a full joint and off I go. So there were different times that I had to use baked goods as well. Rather than just smoking, I would eat a little bit like of a banana bread at night just to kind of help give me that little extra so that I could hopefully sleep for at least a couple of hours. My sleeping's kind of gotten back on track. I sleep about 5 hours a night now.
Are you still using that machine? Is it still working for you?
Absolutely.
Just because I know we had the Levo too, but it broke 2 times on us.
Yeah, the magic butter machine seems like it's a little bit more robust.
Yeah.
It has, I've never had any problems with it. It works great. I've used it several times. Yeah, I've used it plenty to know that it's a good product, Chris Whitner is the guy who founded the company and the product. when I was down in Florida a summer before, I was like, "Oh, you're the magic butter guy."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Wow, from Utah." And I was like, "Yeah." So
Who would have figured, right?
you know, and all the things with cannabis. I mean, being a hippie, whatever, over all these years, I can't say that it's never just been for recreational because I enjoyed it. But when I came down with the breast cancer and found that the medicinal could really help me, I think it helped me all along. I just didn't realize that it was helping me to that magnitude.
Yeah, did you go back and look over your cannabis use over the years and realize, wow, I've been using this as medicine the whole time?
Absolutely. I've been diagnosed with PTSD 3 different times over 25 years. The first one was when my husband was killed by a drunk driver. I've had a lot of really weird situations. Anyways, neither here nor there. I think that I self-medicated all those years because I couldn't take antidepressants and I didn't want to be wiped on Valium or Xanax. I had a full-time job. I had a kid to raise. I didn't have time to mess around. I've always paid my own bills, always been super responsible. So it's hard to admit back then that I was that heavy of a pot user. You know, because people would judge me and be like, "Oh." I'm like, but if you didn't know me and you met me, you'd never guess, now would you?
But it probably would have been okay if you would have been that heavy of a drinker. You know, she just goes through, a bottle a week. It's not that big a deal because it's okay because
and
it's legal.
That's frightening to me.
Yeah.
Nothing good ever came from a bottle for me. I have the same intolerance to alcohol as I do to opioids. Every time I've drank, I've got myself into really bad situations and things have happened, where you just go, wow, was I really there? And I don't like that out of control feeling. Never have. I can smoke weed and I can go skydiving, I can go hiking, I can go swimming, I can go kayaking, I can do whatever I want. And the memory's there. I'm not going to go, wow, what happened? And did I make an ass of myself?
Black out.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, I believe that I've been self-medicating all these years for different reasons, avoiding antidepressants and the different things that are so heavily prescribed in Utah. You go to your doctor and say, I'm feeling kind of blue, and they're like, oh, here, have some Prozac. Whoa, wait a minute. Is this a situation that's at hand, or is this long-term? Is it bipolar? Is it, they're just too quick to write out a prescription for an antidepressant.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite strain?
I do. Sour Diesel's a good one for me.
Just a straight sativa.
I absolutely love sativas. I am not a big indica fan, but everybody knows now everything's pretty hybrid.
Oh.
But my preference has always been sativa, and it's because I am kind of loud and obnoxious, and I've always got a lot of energy, and I'm outgoing, talk to everybody. But it's just always been my go-to for preference, the sativas, for sure.
When it switched and you could get it here in Utah, do you feel like that the system has worked for you?
Absolutely not, unfortunately.
So, 2019, you have cancer, you go through the surgery, you're using cannabis for the pain, you go through chemo, you're using cannabis for really as medicine at that point, right?
Yes.
Using a lot of it,
Yes.
smoking it, started to make some edibles with the magic butter machine, and you're having to get it from wherever, right?
Yes,
But
unfortunately.
You have to have a lot of people helping, right?
Yes.
At that level of consumption, it's probably going to takes a pretty serious commitment to keep you
Yes,
in
it
your
does.
medicine.
And that's hard because my first trip to the pharmacy, which I did a little review on my Instagram, they were great over there. It was grand opening. The place is nice. It's beautifully decorated. But bottom line is when I left there and got home and opened my package of product that I had spent close to $300 on, I was furious. I went back down to the pharmacy and said, I know you can't do refunds, but let me tell you a little something. I've been doing this for a long time, and you sold me popcorn bud that is absolutely disintegrates. It just turns into dust. Smokes real fast, isn't very flavorful, but bottom line, it doesn't do me much good for what I need. Now, my tolerance is not their problem. So, say someone's coming in new, maybe that product would be okay for them. But as somebody who's been familiar with it for years, I've been around grows, I've been in almost every aspect of cannabis that there could be. And to see what was coming out on the market, I was appalled. I was like, Utah, get it together.
Yeah, you're not alone. And I think that this isn't coming from you being a connoisseur of cannabis or somebody who just has been into it their whole life. This is just because you have been somewhat of a user,
Correct.
in my opinion. You're not even, we're not talking about you going to Colorado and becoming a grower and then coming here and complaining. We're just talking about you being a patient.
Correct.
You being a normal medical patient who just requires a better than average, right? A bigger than average supply
Yes.
of a better than average product.
I think that the supply that they're allowing in Utah, that's great if someone can afford it. The cost of what I paid for in that store lasted me a week and a half, and I was like, I can't do that. $300 a week, you're going to break the bank. I'm not working. I have medical bills. I mean, these cancer treatments were costing me $10,000 for the aftershock. So I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I've got to be frugal here. So it was tough for me because I'm like, how do you stretch it that far? I also got 2 vape carts. The carts were cloudy. I did a review on that, and the manufacturer actually reached out to me and tried to make it right. And they said, we don't even know how to take care of this because you can't return the product. We can't give you product to replace it. Mm-hmm. So we're really sorry that this happened, but basically you're shit out of luck. And I was like, you know what, $65 a cart, not happening. Mm-hmm. So I had to steer away from that, and what do you do when your medicine is costing you that much when opioids are on the market for $2 and $3? You can go fill a 60 pill bottle, it's just like, that's been really tough for me to swallow here because cannabis should be regulated. Absolutely. I believe it should stay in the medicinal, for patients. If it goes recreational, that kind of shifts gears, but it needs to be affordable.
How has that evolved for you over the course of, now we're a little over a year in? Is it better? The same? Do you still?
Well, the prices are still the same.
The prices
We're
are still
recording
the
this
same.
on the last day you can legally have out-of-state product. Right?
Smoke it all tonight, right?
This
Smoke it
releases on, and,
July 2nd. This will be
we
released,
will
yeah.
not, as of the release, we will not be able to have out-of-state product in Utah or purchase out-of-state product here.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
I'm leaving.
She's on the road, man.
I'm going
She's
on the
outta
road
here.
for a year, and I do plan on spending a lot of time in the cannabis-friendly states. It's hard in Utah. I would love to say that, I'd love to stay here and grow and get really into that because, I think it could be a niche for me. But by the same token, I'm stifled by the regulations. You're not able to use flame. I'm sorry, but all these vape products that I've spent money on, a G Pen Pro, it didn't work. Took it back. The guy said, I'll give you another one. It didn't work. So then I moved over and bought a different one. It worked for 2 weeks and then blew up. I went camping. I was so mad. I went camping. I had my flower. I had my vape. And guess what happened? It didn't work. I spent 2 days up in the mountains, and I ended up using a Coke can and poking holes in it and smoking it like a teenager.
And you know what? Those work so good.
And you know what?
Those
I
work
had
so
to.
good.
Work.
It was that or go home because
Yeah.
I couldn't get the
because you
medication,
couldn't-
and
right.
I was starting to get the pains that, the kind that bring tears to your eyes, and they're debilitating at different times for me. So to get up there and be in fear that the park ranger's going to come, and if I'm smoking a joint, I'm in trouble.
Right.
You know what I mean?
We've run into this with patients who've got tickets for joints now.
Right. And that's tough because I try to consume at home only. But if I'm on the road and I'm legally allowed to vape it, then I should be able to legally go off where the smokers are or wherever and do what I need to do to medicate and then move on with my day. I do understand, being a parent, I wouldn't want to walk through a situation, out in public with my kids and have them smell it and see people over there smoking and thinking, they're druggies, or, just exposing them to that side of it. They'll be exposed eventually. Usually by 6th grade, they've been exposed. Most of them have tried it, or they have friends that are doing it at that age. So that's a tough one for me.
Yeah, people who don't think your 6th grader or their 6th grader has been exposed to it are not. There's good surveys. There's actually good data to support that.
Right. And I believe being open. I've always been open with my kids. They know. My daughter has always known. So I think it's best to be open with your children, but educate them, that it's not just to go get high or, you go out and get high with your friends. There are legitimate reasons for cannabis. And I think that goes way back to the beginning of time. People have used it for eons for that purpose. So I think education is huge, especially for the generation coming up. You don't want them to think that it's a gateway drug to heroin, or that always blew my mind that they would even put those two together. It's a gateway drug. You're going to end up. No, man, I've smoked cannabis for years. I don't do meth. I'm not a crackhead. I don't take opioids. I'm not a drinker.
It didn't make you one day wake up and say, gosh, I want to do some heroin, right? Yeah.
Or if I couldn't get my marijuana, what was I going to do? Go out and get a fix? No. So I think that the education needs to be there. And I've seen it work miracles with children that are autistic, that have different things going on, a seizure disorder. There was a little girl that I followed her story, and it blew my mind. And these people ended up moving out of state because they were like, we can't get it here. They moved out of Utah. But what it did for this little girl was absolutely amazing, phenomenal. And as a parent of a child that's that sick, even if you've never experienced cannabis, or your LDS or your religion or your social circles don't agree, there is a basis to the medical, use of it. So I think education is huge.
What would you tell somebody who's listening that might be on the fence? They're might be a little apprehensive about trying cannabis. They've never vaped it, never smoked it, nothing. But they have a similar story as you do. What would you tell them?
Honestly, I would try to inform them, give them information, let them make their own decision. Would you rather be wiped out on OxyContin or be able to ingest a little bit of cannabis and get the same effect, if not better, for pain?
Yeah.
And, the stigma that comes with it, that's huge. I think that's the worst part of it for people. I have a friend whose mother who recently passed away. She came to me and she said, Vanessa, I know that you have the magic butter machine. Help me. I don't want my mom high. She needs to be able to eat. She had COPD really bad. So what happened is I ended up making her butter. I donated this butter to this 85-year-old woman. Guess what? She was up and moving. She'd get out of her chair. She'd go outside and go for little walks and stuff. And she said that she couldn't go without the edibles at that point. And I was like, this poor woman, she's been religious her whole life. She's got COPD, she's never smoked. And here she is using cannabis, and she likes it, and it works for her, and it's keeping her alive and happy. So information, I think, is the biggest part to get out to people. Try it. If it doesn't work for you, that's great. But I would much rather see somebody try cannabis than opioids or end up with a huge addiction, and, that's scary to me.
Absolutely.
Too many people have ended up on the wrong side for me.
Yeah.
Using opioids. So
yeah, that's what I think we still need to work on, is that idea that it's a choice, right? It's just another choice. You can try this, you can try benzos, you can try cannabis, you can try opioids, you can, right? Just lay it all out there. Here's the risks, here's the benefit, but it's just another tool, and it's okay to try it.
I really wish that physicians could take a better stance and be more educated as well, because when they're giving these patients these opioids and starting these addictions, that yes, I'll get you over this hump, but what happens in a year from now when these people are so strung out that they're committing crimes to get their drugs? You know what I mean? So if a doctor could say, hey, I do prescribe opioids, but have you ever thought about using cannabis? It might help you in ways, but that just isn't a topic of discussion for most physicians.
Hopefully that changes soon.
I sure hope so.
Especially when the whole descheduling and...
Right. I mean, there's so much information now about this descheduling movement and moving the federal legislation along so that we can have these, we can talk about it more openly. It seems to us, though, I think, and probably you too, that everybody around us is talking about weed, talking about cannabis.
Correct.
But we live in this world, right?
We live in the weed bubble.
I don't know
kind of live in the weed bubble.
If we have magnetism to other people, but this is a funny thing. In the last 15 years, you meet people every day, right? The majority of people that I met smoked. And I'm like, wow, like you would never guess that you smoke, like they wouldn't guess I smoke. So it's out there. It's just that stupid stigma that comes along with it, it being a class 1?
Yeah, it's a Schedule 1.
Schedule 1 drug like heroin. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the stigma that comes with it, not only for patients, physicians, just people in general, I'm hoping that this is opening it wide open so that people can make that choice and maybe have better success and not end up, on the streets, We had a really good family friend who suffered some kind of surgery, went through that, ended up hooked on opioids, and he ended up getting shot by the police in an attempt to satisfy his cravings for his habit. And how sad is that? He left behind 5 kids and his wife, and he was still in pain. So what good came from that? Absolutely none. It devastated and destroyed a family over a very short period of time, maybe 2 or 3 years of his becoming addicted to these opioids and not being able to get, he got cut off from the pain clinic. What do you do at that point?
Try cannabis, I guess.
Still a lot of work to do.
Absolutely. I think cannabis, though, I'm so happy that it's more of a conversation piece these days and that people are seeing the benefits of it, not just, your old hippies or stoners or whatever. It has its place.
Sure. Now talk about your, so you're going on this journey.
Yes.
I mean, it's really not a trip. This is a journey.
This is an absolute healing journey.
Right? So
the name of my motorhome happens to be it's Journey.
There you go.
And you do this art that is, a lot of it is cannabis themed.
Yes.
Right? They're these big circular mandala type.
Correct. What I do, this is how it all began. I sat in a reclining chair for 4 months trying to recover. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't wash my hair. Couldn't do dishes, feed myself. And as I was sitting there, my boyfriend kept saying, why don't you pick up your jewelry wiring again? Do something so you're not just sitting here. I wasn't able to wire jewelry anymore. The neuropathy was so bad from chemo that my fingers don't work. So then I was like, wow, I had a Lazy Susan piece of wood, a 15-inch piece of wood sitting on the top end of my counter. One day I looked at it and said, I want to paint that. And I did. And the funny thing is I did a bunch of pot leaves, just being my weird hippie self. And everybody that saw it was like, wow, hey, I want one of those. And so it kind of turned into this thing where it was an outlet for me to stay creative, but to help kind of shift the troubles that were coming with the cancer. Loss of my job and loss of relationships and loss of body parts and my hair and all these different things. So I pretty much put my energy to that art and I was giving it away. Like, I don't do just weed art, but that's kind of my favorite one. And I don't know if was my frame of mind at the time. And they just legalized and I just got my med card in Utah and I thought, why not? So that's how that started and it just kind of carried over from there. I think that's what I'm going to do. I would love to hit, 420. I don't know if I want to do Colorado or Washington, wherever I end up, but I believe that I can sell my art, but it comes with a message for me. Because look what I have done through the worst of the worst and the damage that the chemo did to me. I can still be creative. So that's been huge for me. It's been a great outlet.
That's awesome.
Such an inspirational story. Such an inspirational. I mean, at least for me. Hopefully others.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you have gone all the way through the story of the things that have happened to you, the things that have happened with you, and through you are just unbelievable. It's really inspiring.
It's been a journey for sure, but now I'm going on the healing journey. So I plan to continue to use cannabis. I'll probably be the granny on the porch where all the grandkids come over and go, Grandma smokes weed. And you know
Here's my grandma.
That's okay because it doesn't change me as a person. I've always been the same person, and so for people, when I went through the cancer, it was quite the eye-opener. A lot of people turned on me, like they didn't want to talk to me or deal with me. And some of that has to do with cancer, but a lot of it had to do with my cannabis use because everybody's like, oh,
hey, don't bring her around my kids,
And I was like, yeah, but that doesn't change me as a person. You liked me before, and guess what? I was stoned then too. So really, so I'm a cannabis definite connoisseur, and I use it now more medicinally. And I'm glad that Utah and all these people like you guys doing your podcast, I learned so much, and there's so much more information on terpenes and all the things that have always interested me, but they were so deep into the scientific side of it that everybody's like, yeah, it's just weed, you know?
Right.
And then the heavier strains would come up and different things. It's fascinating to me, and especially because it comes from the earth, and I believe that God intended it to be used as a medicine, period.
Yeah, it's definitely here for a reason, for
Right.
sure. And it does sound like you have become much more intentional about your use
Yes.
over this whole process
I
than
think
you were
much
before.
more intentional, and I've had kind of an epiphany that all those years that I was treating different things, from depression to PTSD, fibromyalgia, the different things that I had going on just from day-to-day stressful life, and I didn't realize that I was medicating myself until now all of this stuff has come up, and people are really delving into what makes it work. How does it work through your body and the different systems?
Now, back to this journey. Are you going to be documenting any of it on like Instagram?
I am going to vlog everything.
Oh, awesome.
I'm not really down with taking selfies and stuff. That's
Sure,
kind of not my
sure.
thing. So I've got to get into this video.
Because I was going to say, our
Situation.
listeners should connect with you somehow. Like, what's the
Oh
best
yeah,
way
we'll
to
follow.
connect?
We'll
And-
definitely follow along.
That would be
Okay.
awesome. I have Bluntness in Utah on Instagram, and I also have my Uniqueness Creations, which is my art page. And then from there, I think I'll probably start doing TikToks, YouTubes, because not only am I going on a healing journey and I'm going to smoke a lot, but I'm going to make it fun, and I'm going to go do the things that could have been snuffed out from me a year ago. So before
awesome.
I get too old or I can't, I never want to be in a position where my body doesn't work like that again, because it was frightening. You know, I thought there was many times when I laid there in the middle of the night and thought, wow, dude, like I'm on my way out. Like I'm going to die from this shit, you know? But I made it through. And I smoked a lot of weed to get there. So
Well, you deserve all the happiness and success in all of your trip, your journey, your art, everything.
Well, I would appreciate if people follow along and learn something. Learn with me. You know, if you've got things to share, that's great. I love it. I always say that I'm happy to support different cannabis businesses, the CBD, I mean, all different cannabis businesses. I will support them along the road, also support their products and sales. So I'm looking forward to it. And I have a feeling that when I get back from this journey, I'm going to be completely cancer-free, and I think I'll be able to decide what my next career move is going to be, and it's not back into the finance business. So,
Well, if you make it back to Utah, well, even if you don't make it back to Utah, we can even do a phone interview. I think it'd be fun in
Absolutely.
like a year or something to catch up with you,
Yep.
you know?
you know, it would be great, and I actually plan on going and seeing lots of every place that has cannabis.
Okay.
From pharmacies to dispensaries to whatever, festivals, I'll be there.
You should start your own little podcast on the road or something.
Maybe I should.
You know, and you can like interview and talk to people along the way, right?
Right? And I wanted to, my boyfriend's just not down, but I said, what if my trailer, this 28-foot behemoth of a trailer, it's really sweet, dragster ride, what if I have everybody put cannabis stickers on it along the way? And he's like, no.
Probably get pulled over pretty quickly, huh?
I'll not only get pulled over, but
don't go to
it kind of
Idaho.
wrecks the trailer. And he's like, no. And he said, you can do whatever you want on the inside. And I've already started. All of the places I've been in Ogden, or throughout the valley, OG Cannabis products. I've got stickers, I've got all kinds of stuff. And of course I'm going to promote them because I've been in there, I've got to know people, they've provided me with information along the way. It's been great.
That's awesome.
Any final questions you want to ask her, Tim, before we wrap this episode up? Anything you want to talk about before we wrap this episode up?
Nope, just no judgments, guys.
No judgments. This is a judgment-free
we're out.
zone. I mean, that's the thing with this podcast is I'm going to say it now.
No,
too.
you guys are cool. I'm talking about like my family.
Yeah,
and
your
stuff.
family.
But, you know
Because here it
what?
comes,
Love you
right?
anyways, but whatever.
Okay.
It is.
Hey, you
this
know
is
what?
great, though. This is good
As
for you.
know, you got one life. Live it the best way you know how. I mean, that's really all you can do is what
Absolutely.
you know.
It's YOLO.
Exactly.
YOLO.
Yeah.
Haven't
going
heard
on a
that for
journey.
a while.
That's right.
How can people find out more about the podcast, Tim? I'm going to let you kind of, as we wrap this episode up.
This podcast and all of our other podcasts are on utahmarijuana.org/podcast. You can join the community, reach out to Chris or I on that website, or you can reach Chris on his other podcast, chris@iamsaltlake.com. Be sure to check that out. We're with you every Friday. Coming out at 4:20 in the morning.
Subscribe and listen and share, and if you have ideas, send them our way.
Absolutely.
I'm
Stay
always
safe
there at
out there,
4:20
guys.
a.m., so good for you.
Awesome.
Nice. Thanks, guys.
You bet.